My name is Jessica, and I am 29 years old. When I was 12, my parents dropped me off at social services to enter foster care while they traveled the world with my younger sister. For 17 years, I built my life without them, climbing from abandoned child to senior software engineer. Then last month, I received an unexpected email. My parents were jobless, desperate, and reaching out for help after nearly 2 decades of silence. The rush of emotions was overwhelming. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Drop a comment. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to make a difficult decision about toxic family members. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in suburban Chicago with my parents, Susan and Robert, and my sister Allison, who was 3 years younger than me. My early childhood memories were mostly happy ones. Dad would take us sledding in winter at the local park, and Mom would make her famous hot chocolate with extra marshmallows when we returned home with red cheeks and numb fingers. During summer, we would pack into our old station wagon for road trips to Lake Michigan, where Allison and I would build elaborate sandcastles while our parents read paperbacks under a large beach umbrella. Christmas was always special in our house. Mom would hang stockings with our names embroidered on them, and Dad would spend hours stringing lights around our front porch. I remember the year I turned 7, waking up to find a shiny blue bicycle with white streamers on the handlebars waiting for me under the tree. Dad took pictures of everything, documenting our childhoods with his beloved Canon camera that hung constantly around his neck. Looking back, I can pinpoint when things began to change. When I was about 9, Dad started talking more and more about his dream of becoming a famous photographer. He had always taken photos as a hobby, but suddenly it became an obsession. He would spend hours in his makeshift darkroom in our basement, emerging with red-rimmed eyes and a growing portfolio of black and white prints. Mom, who had always been a bit restless, became increasingly fascinated with travel documentaries and exotic destinations. She would sit with Allison, flipping through travel magazines, pointing out places like Bali and Barcelona, Prague and Peru. Someday, she would whisper to Allison, "We will see these places together." I was always the responsible one, even as a child. While Allison showed artistic talent early, drawing impressive pictures that our parents proudly displayed on the refrigerator, I excelled academically. My report cards were filled with A's, and teachers often commented on my maturity and leadership skills. But as my parents became more fixated on Allison's creative abilities, my academic achievements seemed to fade into the background. When I was 10, Dad lost his steady job at the marketing firm where he had worked for years. He claimed it was because his boss just did not understand artistic vision. But I overheard arguments between my parents about missed deadlines and Dad's increasing unreliability. Our financial situation became strained. Mom picked up extra shifts at the department store where she worked, and little luxuries like restaurant dinners and new clothes became rare. During this time, I took on more responsibilities at home. I learned to cook simple meals, helped Allison with her homework, and kept the house tidy. I thought if I could just be helpful enough, my parents would notice and appreciate me. But their attention was increasingly focused on Allison and their own dreams. The summer before everything changed, I overheard my parents having late-night conversations about big plans and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. They spoke in hushed, excited tones, but fell silent whenever I entered the room. I assumed they were planning a special family vacation, perhaps to Disney World or somewhere equally exciting. I was wrong. The signs of their favoritism toward Allison became more obvious. For her 9th birthday, they somehow found money for an elaborate art set with professional quality paints and brushes. For my 12th birthday, just 2 months earlier, I received a practical backpack for school and a card signed with hasty scribbles. During this time, I found solace in my friendship with our neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Harris. She was a retired teacher who lived alone in the blue house next door. When my parents were busy with Allison's art lessons or Dad's photography pursuits, Mrs. Harris would invite me over for cookies and conversations about books. She had an extensive library and would lend me novels that transported me to different worlds. "You have such a bright mind, Jessica," she would say, her eyes crinkling behind her glasses. "Never let anyone dim your light." I remember the last normal day before everything changed. It was a crisp autumn Sunday. The leaves were turning golden and red, and there was a sense of anticipation in the air that I attributed to the upcoming Halloween festivities. Dad made pancakes shaped like animals, a special treat he had not prepared in months. Mom suggested we all go to the park together. Allison brought her sketchbook, and I brought my copy of "And of Green Gables" that Mrs. Harris had given me. Dad took photos of us by the duck pond, and Mom pushed Allison on the swings. I remember feeling a flutter of hope that perhaps things were returning to normal. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed, Mom came into my room and sat on the edge of my bed. She smoothed my hair back from my forehead, a gesture so tender and forgotten that it almost made me cry. "You know we love you, right, Jessica?" she said. I nodded, confused by her sudden affection. "You have always been our rock. So mature for your age." She kissed my forehead and left, leaving behind a lingering scent of her perfume and a sense of unease I could not shake. The next day, my life as I knew it would end, but I went to sleep that night blissfully unaware, clutching the stuffed rabbit I had since infancy, dreaming of normal things like upcoming math tests and what book Mrs. Harris might lend me next. I had no idea that within 24 hours, the concept of normal would be forever redefined in my young life. I will never forget October 15th. It was a Monday and school had been ordinary. I aced a spelling test and was chosen to be team captain in gym class. Walking home, I kicked through piles of fallen leaves, planning to ask Mom if we could bake pumpkin cookies that weekend. When I turned onto our street, I noticed a rental truck parked in our driveway. My first thought was that someone on our block was moving. As I got closer to our house, I realized with growing confusion that my parents were the ones loading boxes into the truck. Dad was carefully securing his photography equipment while Mom directed two movers carrying what looked like suitcases. "What is going on?" I asked, dropping my backpack on the front lawn. "Are we moving? Why did you not tell me?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look I could not interpret. "Jessica, honey, come inside. We need to talk," Mom said, guiding me toward the kitchen while Dad continued with the loading. Inside, Allison sat at the table, excitement radiating from her 9-year-old face. "We are going to see the world, Jess. Dad is going to take amazing photographs, and I will paint everything we see." Mom sat across from me, reaching for my hands. I pulled them back, sensing something was very wrong. "Jessica, your father and I have been offered an incredible opportunity. A travel magazine wants Robert to document artistic communities around the world, and we will be traveling for the next several years." My heart raced. "When do we leave? What about school?" I asked, my mind already cataloging what I would need to pack and which of my teachers I should talk to about long-term assignments. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom looked down at the table, and Allison's smile faded as she sensed the tension. "Jessica," Mom finally said, her voice artificially steady. "You will be staying here." "Staying here? Alone?" I laughed nervously. "I am only 12. "Not alone, sweetie. We have arranged for you to stay with a foster family. They are very nice people with experience taking in children temporarily." The word temporarily hung in the air like a fragile promise. "Foster family? But what about Aunt Judy or Grandma?" My voice was rising with panic. "Aunt Judy is dealing with her divorce, and Grandma is too elderly to care for an active child. Besides, they both live out of state. And we want to keep you in your school district where you are doing so well." Dad had entered the kitchen and joined the conversation, his tone matter-of-fact. "But you are taking Allison." I pointed at my sister, who shrank in her chair. "Allison's education will be different. She is an artist, Jessica. This journey is crucial for her development. She will learn from masters around the world. Your path is more traditional. You thrive in structured environments. You have always been the responsible one, the mature one. Dad's voice held a note of pride that only confused me more. So you're abandoning me because I am responsible? The unfairness of it struck me like a physical blow. We are not abandoning you, Jessica. We are making the best choice for everyone's future. The Martinez family has 2 children close to your age. They live only 20 minutes from here, so you can even visit Mrs. Harris sometimes. Mom's voice was pleading now. You already arranged everything? Without even asking me. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. We knew you would be upset initially. But someday you will understand. This is not forever. Just a few years until you are old enough for more independence. Dad checked his watch. The social worker will be here in 30 minutes to help with the transition. The next half hour passed in a blur of disbelief and heartbreak. I was told to pack essential items only, as the Martinez family would provide necessities. Mom helped me gather clothes and school supplies, chattering nervously about how I would make new friends and how we would email regularly. Allison hugged me tightly, whispering that she would send me drawings from every country. Dad was mostly absent, dealing with final moving arrangements. When the social worker arrived, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Bennett, the reality of what was happening finally hit me fully. This was not a nightmare I would wake from. My parents were choosing to leave me behind. The goodbye was rushed and awkward. Mom hugged me with tears in her eyes, but I stood stiffly in her embrace. We love you so much, Jessica. This is for the best, I promise. Dad patted my shoulder and handed me a new digital camera. So you can send us pictures of your life, too. Allison clung to me, suddenly unsure about the adventure ahead. I will miss you, Jess. I watched from the backseat of Mrs. Bennett's car as my parents and sister drove away in our family car, followed by the rental truck. The house I grew up in grew smaller in the distance. And with it, my childhood. The Martinez family was kind, as promised. Maria and Carlos had 2 children, Isabella, 14, and Daniel, 10. They showed me to a small but clean room I would share with Isabella, who greeted me with shy warmth. They had fostered children before and knew not to push too hard on the first day. Maria made enchiladas for dinner, and Carlos asked gentle questions about my interests and school subjects. Their normalcy in the face of my shattered world was both comforting and surreal. That night, alone in a strange bed, listening to Isabella's unfamiliar breathing, I cried silently into my pillow. I still believed this was temporary, that my parents would realize their mistake and come back for me. Each day for weeks, I checked my new email account, set up specifically for communicating with my family. The messages were sporadic and brief. Mom sent updates from London, then Paris, then Barcelona. Dad's photos are gaining attention. Allison met a real gallery owner who loved her watercolors. The emails were filled with exclamation points and devoid of any mention of when they might return. Occasionally, there would be photos attached, Allison painting by the Seine. Dad setting up a shot of the Sagrada Familia, Mom and Allison sipping hot chocolate in a Viennese cafe. Never, we miss you terribly, or we are planning to come home soon. After 3 months, the emails dwindled to once every few weeks, then once a month. I adjusted to life with the Martinez family, threw myself into schoolwork, and tried not to think about what my sister was experiencing without me. Mrs. Bennett visited regularly to check on my adjustment, and I was allowed occasional supervised visits with Mrs. Harris, who never spoke ill of my parents but held me extra tight when we said goodbye. 6 months after they left, I received an email that finally shattered any illusion that this arrangement was temporary. Great news, Jessica. The magazine has extended Dad's contract for another 2 years, and we will be heading to Asia next month. We are so proud of how well you are doing in school. You always were the independent one. It was then I realized the truth. They were not coming back for me. Not in a few months, not in a few years. I was not a temporarily displaced child. I was an abandoned one. That night, I made a promise to myself as I stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars Isabella had stuck on our ceiling to make me feel more at home. I would build a life so complete and successful that I would never need to depend on people who could discard me so easily. My journey through foster care was not what most people imagine when they hear those words. There were no dramatically abusive homes or Cinderella-like treatment. Instead, it was a series of adjustments, a gradual acceptance of impermanence, and the slow building of my independent identity away from the shadow of being the one left behind. I lived with the Martinez family for almost 2 years. They were genuinely kind people who included me in family gatherings and celebrated my achievements. Isabella became something of a sister figure, teaching me how to apply mascara without clumping and introducing me to bands that would become the soundtrack of my teenage years. But despite their kindness, I maintained an emotional distance, afraid to fully attach to another family that might not be permanent. My fears proved justified when Carlos received a job offer in another state. They invited me to move with them, but Mrs. Bennett explained that crossing state lines with a foster child involved complex legal processes. Instead, I was placed with the Johnson family. The Johnsons were an older couple whose children were grown. Their home was quiet and orderly, with rules posted on the refrigerator and scheduled times for everything from homework to television. Barbara Johnson was a retired librarian who appreciated my love of reading, but was less comfortable with emotional displays. William Johnson was kind but reserved, offering help with math homework but rarely engaging in personal conversations. I stayed with them for 8 months, during which time I received exactly 3 emails from my parents, each briefer than the last. Tokyo is amazing. Allison is studying with a master calligrapher. Dad's urban night photography is being featured in a small gallery. Hope school is good. Love, Mom. No questions about my life. No acknowledgement that I had won the school science fair or that I had braces put on. Just snippets of their adventure. As if I were a distant acquaintance receiving a postcard rather than a daughter. My third and final placement came when Barbara Johnson needed hip surgery and could no longer manage having a teenager in the house. The Parker family was my most challenging adjustment. Linda and David Parker had 4 biological children ranging from 5 to 15 and 2 other foster children besides me. Their house was chaotic, loud, and often messy. Privacy was non-existent. And personal belongings had a way of disappearing. It was not a bad home, just an overwhelming one for someone who had grown accustomed to quieter environments. Throughout these transitions, school remained my constant. I poured my energy into academics, joining the debate team, math club, and eventually student council. My grades were perfect, and teachers began suggesting advanced placement courses and early college preparation. In the classroom, I felt in control. Achievement was a clear, measurable thing. Unlike the murky waters of family and belonging, the school counselor, Marilyn Green, became an important figure in my life. She had a small office with motivational posters on the walls and a jar of chocolate candies on her desk. During our regular meetings, she would ask about more than just my academic progress. "How are you adjusting to the Parkers, Jessica?" she asked during one session when I was 15. "It is fine. Loud, but fine." "And have you heard from your parents recently?" I shrugged, trying to appear casual. "An email last month from somewhere in India. Allison is studying traditional textiles or something." Mrs. Green leaned forward slightly. "It is okay to be angry with them." "You know, I am not angry," I replied automatically, though we both knew it was a lie. "I am busy. I have a life here." She nodded, not pushing further. "You certainly do. And you are building quite an impressive academic record. Have you thought about college yet?" College became my focus, my light at the end of the tunnel. I researched scholarships obsessively, knowing I would have to fund my education independently. Mrs. Green helped me navigate applications for grants specifically available to foster youth. I took every honors and AP class available, studied relentlessly for the SAT, and crafted personal essays that carefully balanced my background with my ambitions, never veering into self-pity. During this time, I maintained my connection with Mrs. Harris, my former neighbor. Though visits were less frequent after my first placement, we kept in touch through letters and occasional supervised meetings. When I turned 16 and was granted more independence in my movements, I began visiting her more regularly. Her blue house remained unchanged, an island of stability in my shifting world. Your parents sent a card for your birthday, Mrs. Harris mentioned during one visit, handing me an envelope postmarked from Berlin. Inside was a generic birthday card with a brief note, "Happy 16th. Hard to believe our little girl is growing up so fast. Allison says hi. Love, Mom and Dad." Enclosed was a photo of Allison, now 12, standing before an ornate European cathedral, looking like a stranger. They missed my science fair. They missed my debate championship. They missed me getting braces on and off. But sure, they cannot believe I am growing up fast, I said bitterly, tossing the card aside. Mrs. Harris did not offer platitudes or tell me to forgive them. Instead, she said, "You are becoming an extraordinary young woman, Jessica. And that is happening because of you, not despite them." By my senior year, I had been accepted to 5 universities, including my dream school, with scholarship offers covering most expenses. The day my acceptance letter arrived, I drafted an email to my parents, allowing myself a moment of hope that they might share my excitement or even attend my graduation. I got into Stanford with a nearly full scholarship. "Graduation is June 10th if you want to come." The reply came 3 days later. "Congratulations. Always knew you were smart. Sorry we cannot make graduation. We will be in Prague for Dad's exhibition. So proud of you though. Love, Mom, Dad, and Allison." That was the moment I decided to stop reaching out. If they could not make the effort to witness this milestone, I would no longer seek their approval or attention. I attended graduation with Mrs. Harris beaming from the audience, along with Mrs. Green and even the Martinez family, who drove 5 hours to surprise me. The Parkers took photos and gave me a gift card to buy dorm supplies. These were the people who showed up. And I finally understood they were more my family than the people who shared my DNA. After graduation, I packed my few belongings and prepared for the next chapter of my life. Before leaving for college, I visited Mrs. Harris one last time. "I will not be checking that email account anymore," I told her, referring to the address my parents used. "If they want to reach me, they can make a real effort." Mrs. Harris hugged me tightly. "You deserve people who choose to be in your life every day, Jessica. Not just when it is convenient for them." With that blessing, I closed the door on my childhood and stepped toward a future of my own making. Stanford's campus was breathtaking, with its Spanish-inspired architecture and palm-lined walkways. My dorm room was small but felt luxurious simply because it was mine. My roommate, Sarah Wilson, was a friendly girl from Seattle with an infectious laugh and a penchant for midnight study sessions fueled by energy drinks. Within weeks, we developed a comfortable routine, respecting each other's space while offering companionship during meals and weekend activities. While my scholarship covered most expenses, I still needed money for books, supplies, and basic necessities. I juggled 2 part-time jobs throughout my undergraduate years. During weekdays, I worked at the campus library, shelving books and assisting students with research questions. On weekends, I served coffee at a popular cafe near campus, where the tips helped cover expenses not included in my financial aid package. The workload was demanding. Between challenging computer science courses, work schedules, and attempting to maintain some semblance of a social life, sleep became a luxury. But unlike many of my peers who complained about their packed schedules, I found comfort in the busyness. Every completed assignment, every paycheck, every new friendship was proof that I was building something meaningful from scratch. During my sophomore year, I met Michael Chin in an advanced programming class. We were partnered for a complex project, and his brilliant mind and quiet determination complemented my meticulous planning and problem-solving skills. Our friendship developed naturally as we spent late nights debugging code and discussing the future of technology. Michael had grown up in a tight-knit family in San Francisco, and he seemed fascinated by my independence. "Do you not get lonely?" he asked one night as we walked back to the dorms after a marathon coding session. I considered his question seriously. Sometimes. But I learned early that depending too much on others can leave you vulnerable. Self-reliance is safer. Michael shook his head. "That sounds exhausting, Jess. Humans are not meant to be islands." Sarah and Michael became my chosen family. They dragged me to campus events when I would have stayed in studying, celebrated my achievements with genuine enthusiasm, and never pressed when I was reluctant to discuss my past. Sarah's parents even invited me to their home for Thanksgiving during junior year when staying on the nearly empty campus seemed too depressing. The Walker family home was warm and chaotic, with Sarah's 3 siblings creating a constant buzz of conversation and laughter. Dr. and Mrs. Walker welcomed me as if I were a long-lost daughter, insisting I take the guest room rather than the couch and including me in family photos. Watching them together, the casual affection and inside jokes, I felt a pang of what I had missed, but also gratitude for being included now. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science. The ceremony was attended by Sarah, Michael, Mrs. Harris, who made the long journey despite her advancing age, and even Mrs. Green, my high school counselor. Their cheers when my name was called filled the space where my biological family should have been. My first job after college was at a mid-sized tech company in San Francisco. The starting salary seemed enormous after years of careful budgeting, and I found an apartment with reasonable rent by sharing with 2 other recent graduates. The work was challenging and rewarding, involving the development of security protocols for financial applications. My managers quickly recognized my dedication and technical skills, promoting me to team lead within 18 months. Despite professional success, my personal life remained guarded. I dated occasionally but maintained emotional distance, always waiting for the other person to lose interest or leave. After a particularly promising relationship ended because, in his words, "I could never quite reach you," I finally sought therapy. Dr. Karen Wilson's office became a safe space for untangling the knots of abandonment and trust issues I had carried for years. Our sessions were often difficult, forcing me to confront feelings I had efficiently compartmentalized. "You have built impressive walls, Jessica," Dr. Wilson observed during one session. "They have protected you, but they are also keeping out experiences that might enrich your life." The last time I fully trusted people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, they left me with strangers and traveled the world with my sister, I replied. "Yes, they did. And that was about their limitations, not your worthiness," she said gently. "The question is, how long will you allow their choices to determine your capacity for connection?" Therapy was not an instant fix, but a gradual process of examining harmful patterns and practicing vulnerability in safe relationships. I learned to distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing fear, between self-reliance and isolation. Slowly, I began allowing myself to need others occasionally and to believe that not everyone would disappear when things became inconvenient. At 26, I achieved a major milestone: purchasing my first home. It was a small but charming condo in a developing neighborhood, with large windows that filled the space with natural light. The day I signed the final papers and received the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room, overwhelmed by the significance. This was mine, earned through my own efforts, a tangible symbol of stability I had created for myself. That same year, I was promoted to senior software engineer, a position that came with increased responsibility and a substantially higher salary. My team respected my leadership, and projects under my direction consistently met or exceeded expectations. I found unexpected fulfillment in mentoring junior developers, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds who reminded me of my younger self. Throughout these years, I maintained minimal awareness of my biological family's activities through occasional social media glimpses and rare updates from distant relatives. I learned that after years of nomadic living, my parents had settled in Berlin, where my father taught photography workshops and my mother worked at an international school. Allison, despite all the specialized training and opportunities, had not developed the illustrious artistic career my parents had sacrificed so much to nurture. According to a cousin who still kept in touch with them, she worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm, a respectable career, but hardly the extraordinary path that had justified leaving me behind. I felt no satisfaction in this knowledge, only a dull ache of waste. All those years, all those experiences I was denied, all for a dream that never materialized as they had envisioned. As I approached my late 20s, several important developments shaped my life. I established a small scholarship fund for foster youth pursuing higher education, seeded with my own money and supplemented by corporate matching programs. The first recipient was a brilliant young woman who had aged out of the system and dreamed of becoming a doctor. I also met Thomas Russell, a software architect who consulted with my company on a major project. Unlike previous relationships, I did not immediately retreat when our professional interactions evolved into personal interest. Thomas was patient and perceptive, recognizing my hesitation without taking it personally. "I am not in a hurry, Jessica," he told me after our third date, when I warned him about my complicated relationship with commitment. "Some things are worth waiting for." Our relationship developed gradually, built on honest communication and mutual respect. When I finally shared the full story of my childhood, Thomas listened without interruption, his expression reflecting anger on my behalf rather than pity. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said when I finished. "It explains a lot about your strength and self-sufficiency, but it also makes me sad for what you lost." By my 29th birthday, I had created a life that felt whole and meaningful. My career was thriving, my home was a sanctuary, and my relationships, though few, were deep and genuine. I had regular video calls with Sarah, who was completing her medical residency in Chicago, and weekly dinners with Michael and his husband, who lived nearby. Thomas and I had been dating exclusively for over a year, our relationship deepening into something I cautiously allowed myself to believe might be permanent. I had not heard directly from my parents in nearly 7 years when the email arrived that would force me to confront the past I thought I had finally put behind me. The email arrived on a Tuesday evening in March. I was preparing dinner while listening to a technology podcast when my phone chimed with a notification. The sender's name made me freeze. Susan Parker, my mother's full name, an address I had not seen in my inbox for years. For several minutes, I just stared at the notification, dinner preparation forgotten. Part of me wanted to delete it unread, to protect the stability I had worked so hard to build. Another part, the wounded child who still lived somewhere inside me, desperately wanted to know what could possibly warrant contact after so long. Curiosity 1. I opened the email. "Dearest Jessica, I hope this email still reaches you. It has been too long since we have been in proper contact, and that is entirely our fault. Your father and I have been reflecting a lot lately on the choices we made and the impact they had on you. I will get straight to the point. We are in a difficult situation. Robert's photography career never quite took off the way we hoped, and the workshop he was teaching in Berlin has closed. I lost my position at the international school due to budget cuts. We have been struggling financially for some time now, and recently we had to give up our apartment. Allison has her own life now and has made it clear she cannot support us. She has not spoken to us in almost a year. I suppose she has her own unresolved feelings about our parenting choices. We are planning to return to the United States next month. We have some distant relatives in California who might help temporarily, but we were wondering if you might be in a position to help us get back on our feet. Perhaps with temporary housing or a loan until we can find employment. I know this is a lot to ask after everything. We made mistakes, Jessica. Terrible mistakes that hurt you deeply. If you are willing to talk, we would like to try to make amends. Love always. Mom. I read the email 3 times. Emotions cycling through me so rapidly I could barely process them. Shock at the audacity. Anger at the casual acknowledgement of mistakes as if abandoning a child was equivalent to choosing the wrong paint color. A vindictive flash of satisfaction that their grand plans had ultimately failed. And underneath it all, a confusing current of concern for the people who had once been the center of my world. I closed the email without responding and called Thomas. His steady voice helped anchor me as I explained the situation. "What are you thinking of doing?" he asked after I finished. "I do not know," I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it completely. Another part wants to reply with a single word, no, and there is this tiny, irrational part that feels somehow obligated to help. "Whatever you decide, I will support you," Thomas said. "But remember that you do not owe them anything, Jessica. Family is about consistent presence and support, not DNA." The next day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Wilson. Her office felt especially comforting as I handed her my phone with the email displayed. After reading it carefully, she looked up. "This is quite a development. How are you feeling about it?" "Confused, angry, and somehow guilty for feeling angry." "The guilt is understandable but misplaced," she said. "They made adult choices that deeply affected your life. Now they are making another adult choice to ask for your help. You have every right to make your own adult choice about how to respond." We spent the session exploring potential responses and their likely emotional impact on me. Dr. Wilson did not tell me what to do, but helped me understand what each option might mean for my well-being and healing process. "Whatever you decide, make sure it is a choice that honors your boundaries and your journey," she advised as our time ended. Not one made from obligation or unresolved longing for their approval. Over the next few days, I did something I rarely allowed myself. I took time off work to process rather than burying myself in projects. I went for long walks along the bay, sat in coffee shops staring at blank journal pages, and had deep conversations with the few people I truly trusted. During this time, I also did some investigating. Through social media and conversations with extended family members I rarely contacted, I learned more about my parents' situation. Their financial struggles were not new or sudden, but the result of years of poor planning and an unsustainable lifestyle. They had borrowed money from various relatives over the years, rarely repaying in full. Several family members described patterns of emotional manipulation when they did not get the help they wanted. Most revealing was a conversation with my cousin Andrea, who had maintained more regular contact with them than others. "They have been talking about reaching out to you for months," she told me during our phone call. But it was always framed as "Jessica is doing so well in her career, she could probably help us out." Never once did I hear them express real remorse or concern about how you were affected by their choices. I also learned that Allison's estrangement from our parents had come after years of struggling with the pressure of being the chosen child, the one whose talent had been deemed worthy of sacrifice. According to Andrea, Allison had finally confronted them about the damage their choices had caused both of us, only to have them dismiss her concerns as ingratitude. She told them she needed space to figure out who she is apart from their expectations, Andrea explained. They did not take it well. This information gave me a more complete picture of the situation I was facing. My parents were not simply down on their luck. They were experiencing the natural consequences of decades of self-centered decisions. And now, with their preferred support system unavailable, they were turning to the child they had deemed expendable years ago. The irony was almost too perfect. For several nights, I slept poorly. My dreams filled with fragments of childhood memories and imagined confrontations. I drafted and deleted countless reply emails, ranging from coldly professional to emotionally raw. Nothing felt right. One evening, as Thomas and I were having dinner at my condo, he asked a question that shifted my perspective. What would you tell one of the foster kids you mentor if they were in this situation? I considered this carefully. I would tell them that maintaining boundaries does not make them a bad person. That they can acknowledge their parents' humanity and struggles without sacrificing their own well-being. That forgiveness, if they choose it, is for their peace. Not to absolve others of responsibility. Thomas nodded. Perhaps that is advice worth taking yourself. That night, I made my decision. I would respond to my parents, but on my terms. I would not act from guilt or obligation, nor from vengeance or bitterness. I would make choices that reflected the person I had worked so hard to become, compassionate but with healthy boundaries, understanding but not easily manipulated. I drafted a brief email suggesting a video call that weekend, providing a specific date and time. The response came within minutes, effusive with gratitude and emotionally loaded phrases about family reunions and healing old wounds. I recognized the manipulation tactics for what they were and remained firm in my resolve to approach this situation with clear eyes. As the scheduled call approached, I prepared both practically and emotionally. I cleared my schedule, arranged for Thomas to be nearby for support afterward, and spent time journaling about my boundaries and expectations. I was no longer a powerless child subject to their decisions. I was an adult who had built a successful life on my own terms, and I would engage with them from that position of strength. Saturday morning arrived with an unusual heaviness in the air. I had slept fitfully, my dreams populated by distorted versions of my childhood home and faceless parents calling my name. I woke earlier than necessary, spending extra time on my appearance, though I later recognized this as an unconscious desire to present the most successful, put-together version of myself. Thomas arrived an hour before the scheduled call, bringing breakfast and calm reassurance. "Remember, you are in control of this conversation," he reminded me as we sat at my kitchen island. "You can end it at any time." At precisely 10 a.m., I opened my laptop and initiated the video call. After a brief moment of connection, my parents' faces appeared on screen. The shock of seeing them after 17 years was physical, a jolt that tightened my chest and briefly stole my breath. They had aged considerably. My father's once dark hair was now mostly gray, and deep lines framed his eyes and mouth. My mother looked thinner than I remembered, her face more angular, her blonde hair cut in a short, practical style rather than the flowing locks of my childhood memories. They sat close together on what appeared to be a worn couch in a small, sparsely furnished room. "Jessica," my mother breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "Look at you. You are so beautiful. You look so successful, so professional," my father added, his voice gruff with emotion or perhaps discomfort. I thanked them politely, maintaining a neutral expression despite the riot of emotions inside me. "It has been a long time," I said, stating the obvious to fill the awkward silence that followed their initial reaction. "Too long," my mother agreed quickly. "We have missed you terribly, Jessica. Not a day goes by that we do not think about you and wonder how you are doing." The statement, delivered with seemingly genuine emotion, sparked an unexpected flare of anger. "Really? Because the email address you used to contact me has been the same for 17 years, yet I have not heard from you directly in 7. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We did not want to intrude on your life. We figured you were busy with college and then your career." "That is an interesting interpretation of abandonment," I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. "But I think we should address the current situation rather than relitigating the past." Your email mentioned financial difficulties and a need for help. My directness seemed to throw them off balance. They had perhaps expected more emotional vulnerability, an easier opening for their practiced narratives. My mother recovered first. Yes, we have had some setbacks. Robert's workshop closed suddenly, and the school where I was teaching eliminated several positions, including mine. We have tried to find new opportunities in Berlin, but at our age, it has been challenging. The economy is difficult everywhere, my father added. And without permanent residency status, our options in Germany became limited. They continued explaining their situation, painting themselves as victims of circumstance rather than the architects of their own difficulties. As they spoke, I noticed familiar patterns emerging. Subtle guilt manipulation, implication that their artistic pursuits were somehow nobler than conventional employment, suggestions that the world had failed to recognize their special talents. What exactly are you hoping I can provide? I asked when there was a pause in their narrative. They exchanged a quick glance before my mother answered. We were thinking perhaps you might have space in your home temporarily, just until we can get on our feet. Or possibly a loan to help us secure an apartment and cover expenses while we job hunt. And how much financial assistance were you thinking of? My father mentioned a figure that would have constituted several months of my salary, as if it were a minor amount. Just to get established again in the States. We would pay you back, of course, once we are working. I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts before responding. I have given your situation a lot of consideration, and I am prepared to offer some assistance, but with conditions. Their expressions brightened immediately, a look of relief crossing both faces. I will not be offering housing in my home, I continued. That is not on the table. What I am willing to do is connect you with a financial literacy counselor who works with my company. Pay for 6 sessions with them to help you develop a sustainable budget and plan. Their smiles faltered slightly, but I pressed on. I also have contacts at several companies and can make introductions for potential job opportunities, though I cannot guarantee employment. And I am willing to provide a one-time payment toward first month's rent and security deposit for an apartment, paid directly to the landlord, not to exceed $3,000. The amount was generous, but far less than they had hinted at wanting. My father's face darkened slightly, while my mother maintained a strained smile. That is a start, she said carefully. Though we were hoping for something more substantial given your success. We are your parents, after all. Yes, you are my biological parents, I acknowledged. But parenthood is about more than genetics. It is about consistent presence, support, and sacrifice for your child's well-being. When I was 12 years old, you decided that my sister's potential artistic career was worth more than my need for family stability. You made a choice that prioritized your desires over my well-being. We did what we thought was best for everyone, my father interjected defensively. You were always so mature, so capable. And we knew you would excel in a traditional educational environment. I was 12, I repeated firmly. A child. And yes, I did excel, but not because you abandoned me. I excelled despite that trauma. Because I had to create security for myself when you removed it from my life. My mother's eyes welled with tears. We made mistakes, Jessica. We know that now. But we are still family. Does that not count for anything? Family is not just about blood relation, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. It is about showing up. The people who attended my high school graduation were family. The friends who helped me move into my college dorm were family. The colleagues who celebrated my promotions were family. Family is earned through consistent care, not bestowed by genetics. My father's expression hardened. So this is punishment then? We need help. And you're using this opportunity to make us pay for past mistakes. I shook my head. This is not punishment. It is a boundary. I am offering help that I believe is appropriate given our relationship and history. If you genuinely want to rebuild a connection with me, it will take time and consistent effort. Not a financial transaction. We do not have time, my father said bluntly. We need significant help now, not symbolic gestures and lectures about parenting. Robert, my mother cautioned, clearly sensing his approach was counterproductive. No, Susan, I will not beg. She either helps her family in a meaningful way or she does not. All this talk about boundaries and earning relationships when what we need is actual financial support. He turned his gaze directly to me. We are not asking for charity, Jessica. We are asking for family support during a difficult time. Something that is normal in most families. What you are describing is not normal, I replied calmly. Most parents do not abandon one child to travel the world with another, then reappear decades later expecting financial support without having made any effort to maintain a relationship in between. The conversation deteriorated from there. My father became increasingly agitated, accusing me of being cold and unforgiving. My mother alternated between tearful pleas and subtle guilt trips about family obligation. I maintained my position, repeating my offer of limited financial assistance and job connections, but refusing to provide the substantial bailout they clearly expected. I think we should end this call, I finally said after nearly an hour of circular conversation. My offer stands. If you would like the help I have outlined, let me know and I will make the arrangements. If not, I understand. So that is it? My father demanded. Take your crumbs or nothing? It is not crumbs. Dad, it is a reasonable offer from someone you have had virtually no relationship with for 17 years. I wish you well, truly. But I will not set myself on fire to keep you warm. Before ending the call, I added one final thought. If you are genuinely interested in rebuilding a relationship, separate from financial assistance, I would be open to occasional communication. But that would need to start with respect for my boundaries and acknowledgement of the impact your choices had on my life. My mother nodded tearfully while my father remained stone-faced. I ended the call feeling emotionally drained, but also strangely peaceful. For the first time, I had engaged with my parents as equals, neither the abandoned child nor the vengeful adult, but simply a person with clear boundaries and self-respect. Thomas, who had remained quietly supportive in another room during the call, joined me on the couch afterward. He said nothing, simply held my hand as I processed the complex mix of emotions the confrontation had stirred up. Did I do the right thing? I finally asked. The real question is, did you honor your own truth and boundaries? He replied. Because from what I heard, you offered compassionate help while maintaining healthy limits. That seems right to me. Later that evening, I received a brief email from my mother, separate from my father. We are considering your offer. Despite how things sounded today, we are grateful you are willing to help at all. I hope someday we can find a way forward. It was not an apology or an acknowledgement of the past, but it was perhaps a tiny step towards something resembling honest communication. Whether anything would come of it remained to be seen, but I had stood my ground and spoken my truth. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the strength and clarity I had worked so hard to develop. 1 month after the confrontation with my parents, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The past weeks had brought unexpected developments and moments of clarity that were still settling into place in my understanding of family, forgiveness, and self-worth. A week after our video call, my mother had emailed accepting the offer of financial assistance for an apartment deposit and the financial counseling sessions. My father, she explained, was still struggling with pride, but had eventually acknowledged they had few other options. They had found a modest apartment in Sacramento and secured interview opportunities through the connections I provided. I arranged the deposit payment directly to their new landlord and set up the financial counseling sessions as promised. Our communication remained limited and somewhat formal, primarily focused on practical matters rather than emotional reconciliation. I made it clear that rebuilding any relationship would be a gradual process requiring consistent effort and respect for boundaries on both sides. Whether they would commit to that journey long-term was still uncertain, but I had made peace with that uncertainty. My career continued to flourish. The week after the confrontation, I received news of a promotion to technical director, overseeing multiple development teams and shaping the technical strategy for our growing division. The timing felt symbolic somehow, a professional affirmation as I was establishing personal boundaries. Thomas and I had grown closer through the experience. Witnessing how he supported me without trying to control the situation or impose his own solutions confirmed what I had been feeling for months. This relationship was built on mutual respect and genuine care, unlike anything I had experienced before. We began tentative conversations about a shared future, discussions that no longer triggered my instinct to withdraw or protect myself from potential abandonment. Perhaps the most unexpected development came in the form of an email from my sister Allison. Apparently, our parents had mentioned reconnecting with me, and she had found me through social media. Her message was tentative but heartfelt. I have wanted to reach out for years, but never knew how to begin. I was just a child when they made those decisions, but I have carried guilt about it my whole life. If you're open to it, I would like to talk. After careful consideration, I agreed to a video call. Seeing my sister as an adult was surreal. At 26, she had our mother's delicate features, but a confidence in her expression that was entirely her own. She worked as a graphic designer for an advertising agency in Chicago, had a long-term boyfriend, and volunteered teaching art to disadvantaged youth. I want you to know that I confronted them, she told me during our conversation. About 2 years ago, I finally processed how deeply messed up their choices were, how they essentially sacrificed your childhood for my supposed talent. I told them I never asked for that burden and did not want it. Her estrangement from our parents had come after they dismissed her concerns and refused to acknowledge the damage their choices had caused. They still believe they did the right thing, that it all would have been worth it if I had become some famous artist. But that was never my dream, it was theirs. We agreed to move forward slowly, getting to know each other as adults rather than trying to recapture a sibling relationship that had been interrupted in childhood. Monthly video calls became part of my routine, a tentative bridge to the family I had lost. My volunteer work with foster youth expanded during this time. The scholarship program I had established grew with additional corporate sponsorships, and I began mentoring several young people aging out of the system. Sharing my experience and providing practical guidance gave purpose to my painful past, transforming it from merely personal trauma into a source of insight that could benefit others. During a therapy session 6 weeks after the confrontation, Dr. Wilson noted the changes in my demeanor. "You seem more settled, Jessica. More at peace." "I think I finally understood something fundamental," I replied. For years, I was waiting for my parents to acknowledge what they did, to validate my pain by admitting they were wrong. I needed their recognition to feel my experience was real. And now, she prompted, now I realize I do not need their validation. My experience was real regardless of whether they ever acknowledge it. My worth is not dependent on their ability to recognize it. That is surprisingly freeing. This realization marked a turning point in my healing journey. I had spent so many years defining myself in relation to their abandonment, either trying to prove my value through achievement or protecting myself from further rejection. Recognizing that my worth existed independently of their perception allowed me to engage with them, not as the wounded child seeking approval, but as an adult secure in her own value. One Saturday morning in early summer, Thomas and I were having breakfast on my balcony when he asked a question that caught me by surprise. "Do you think you will ever fully forgive them?" I considered this carefully. I think forgiveness is misunderstood. People treat it like a gift you give someone else, absolving them of responsibility. But real forgiveness is something you do for yourself, releasing the expectation that the past could have been different. I sipped my coffee before continuing. By that definition, yes, I am working on forgiveness. Not because they deserve it or have earned it, but because holding on to anger takes energy I would rather invest elsewhere. That does not mean I will ever trust them fully or remove the boundaries I have established. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. That seems healthy to me. Forgiveness without abandoning self-protection. The Scholarship Fund for Foster Youth held its annual award ceremony that spring, recognizing 5 recipients who would receive financial support for their college education. Standing at the podium addressing these remarkable young people who had overcome significant obstacles, I felt a sense of completion, of cycles breaking and new possibilities emerging. Family is not always what we are born into, I told them. Sometimes it is what we create for ourselves through connection, mutual support, and showing up consistently for each other. Your path may have been difficult, but it has also given you unique strength and perspective. That is something no one can take from you. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. We established a pattern of monthly check-in calls, primarily initiated by my mother. My father participated but remained somewhat distant, perhaps still nursing wounded pride. They were making progress with the financial counselor, though years of poor habits proved difficult to change. The job connections I provided had resulted in modest employment for both of them, enough to maintain their independence, but not the lifestyle they had once envisioned. During one call, my mother tentatively asked if they might visit someday. I was not ready for that level of reconnection and said so honestly, I am still processing a lot of feelings about our history. I think in-person visits would be overwhelming right now. She accepted this boundary with surprising grace. We will move at your pace, Jessica. We have already lost so much time by making decisions that hurt you. We will not make that mistake again. Whether this represented genuine growth or simply recognition that I now held the power in our dynamic, I could not be certain. But I appreciated the respect for my boundaries, however belatedly it came. The most profound change was internal. I no longer defined myself primarily as the abandoned child, the one left behind. That experience would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the central narrative around which everything else revolved. I was Jessica, a successful professional, a caring partner, a loyal friend, a mentor to others finding their way. A woman building a life of meaning and connection on her own terms. Life is rarely about perfect resolutions or complete closure. It is messier than that, full of partial healings and imperfect reconciliations. I had given my parents what they deserved, not cruelty or revenge, but honesty and appropriate boundaries. In doing so, I had also given myself what I deserved, the freedom to define my own worth and write my own story going forward. As I approach my 30th birthday, I am looking forward, not back. The past shaped me but does not confine me. Family has become something I choose daily through my actions and commitments, not merely an accident of birth. And in that choice lies power and healing I never imagined possible when I was that 12-year-old girl watching her parents drive away. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and healing. Remember that your worth is never defined by those who failed to see it, and creating boundaries is an act of self-respect, not punishment. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in writing your own.